Dr. Jazz. Dr. Jazz.
Spoken to so many people you also played with, and you know, I have you on quite some records actually, and I was like, man, that would be fun to do. You're in Europe, so it's easy time-wise also.
Yeah, it's great.
So, but I wanted to ask you this. I watched the other day the stream, I think it was from A-Train, of the Generations Quartet. I mean, that was a while ago, I think, last year, and you did like 3 sets.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We did 3 sets, right? Yeah.
I love that, and I love the new band. And I wanted to ask you. I mean,
thanks.
I know you did those records, Flight and Thursday. With kind of, at least the drummer is the same. But how did this group get together? Were these like also some of your ex-students, or?
They're all my ex-students.
Ah, okay.
And that's the nice thing. I mean, I call it the Generations Trio and the Generations Quartet. The Generations Trio is with Olli Potratz, the bass player, and he was my student 15 years ago, maybe.
Oh, okay.
So he's one of the older ones, and then the drummer Thilo was also a student of mine, and Clara, the piano player in the quartet, she's probably the youngest in the group, I think, and the only exception is Josh Ginsberg. He was not a student of mine. He's an American bass player who I met here in Berlin, and he's such a great player. Yeah, and he's so much fun to play with. So, you know, and he also represents a generation apart from me. So it's kind of like, you know, we have like the younger generation, like the people in their late 20s and 30s. And then we have Oliver Potratz, who was like 44, 45. And then we have Josh, who's somewhere in between that. And then there's me, you know, and I'm 26. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I'm just having a bad day. That's what,
no coffee, right?
Right. So, so we, you know, we occasionally got together and just jammed. And I thought to myself, these guys are so good and they're so inspiring. And there's something about playing with young people that's such an inspiration to me. You know, they're up for anything. You know, they introduce me to new things. You know, they're like, you know, have you heard this recording, or check out this guy? You know, they're kind of, even in a certain sense, more in touch with what's happening in the contemporary jazz scene. They have their finger on the pulse, and they have no fears. You know, I notice that when I play with you know, musicians my age, if I want to do something crazy, like let's do 3 days at the you know, at the A-Train. One day we play standards, the next day we play art tunes, then we play a total evening of free music. There's always some apprehension that it might not work. You know, oh, well, you want to play free, or you know, or I've had the experience with, you know, musicians of my generation. If I say let's just do a spontaneous composition, they say, what key?
Yeah,
I said it's a spontaneous key. Okay, but you want to do a groove? You know, it's, there are always these signs of mild insecurity and fear, you know. Yeah. So with these guys and girls, you know, I do anything, and I write some crazy stuff, and they play it and they write their own stuff. Yeah. And it's always a challenge to play, because the stuff that I would never ever think of myself, and they think of the shit. So it's very inspiring. Plus, they're really wonderful people. Yeah, that's so important. Thilo and Clara are married, you know, so they're a couple, and which has its own dynamic, so which is cool. And you know, and they're just really lovely people. And Clara was a real eye opener for me, because she was my student when she first started. When she first started at the university, she was very talented but inexperienced as a jazz player, and she progressed amazingly. And what I love about her is she has a very eccentric quality to her playing, which, and she's not one of these people who feels she has to represent blues and bebop, in a very, in a sort of traditional fashion. That she just plays. She's a totally intuitive player who plays totally crazy stuff, and every one of her solos is to me an adventure and a journey, which is full of unknown turns and little nooks and crannies and places where she goes. They're always a surprise to me, So, I mean, a long time ago, someone whose name I won't mention said to me, yeah, but she's not a real jazz pianist. You should play with a real jazz. I said, that's the one thing that I love about her. Now, thank God she's not like a real jazz pianist. She, in the truest sense of the word, she is a real jazz pianist because she's an improviser. And she's totally, her playing is totally lick free,
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. No cliches. Yeah. Like kind of.
And Kilo writes music, and he comes up with his own stuff. So it's really a fun band to play with. Both of them, the trio and the quartet. Yeah,
I mean, I love especially when you mentioned the free impros, the spontaneous creations night that you guys did.
Yeah.
That was beautiful because it was just like it went unpredictably in some unexpected directions, and I love that about music. That it's like, wow, okay.
Well, I mean, that's what music should be.
Yeah.
I mean, I call it the pure music. Like pure music to me is music that exists in the moment.
Yeah.
Next week we're going into a studio here in Berlin, and we're doing a direct to disc recording.
Oh wow!
We're recording direct onto vinyl.
Wow!
And we got a deal. We're going into a very good studio here called Hansa Studio in Berlin, and we got a deal. And they are using this opportunity for themselves to advertise their new equipment and their new studio.
Oh, wow. That's super.
So we're just going to play. I think we're going to record an hour of free music.
Oh wow, man! That's beautiful.
And it goes direct to vinyl, and it's a very sensitive process.
Yeah.
And so it'll come out, and no one will buy it, so it'll be great.
Well, yeah, okay.
Yeah. But anyway, that's one thing. In July we're going into the studio and doing recording of our new material.
Yeah.
And we have a Christmas album coming out in December.
Seriously?
November. Yeah, we did a Christmas album.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Really, yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
But you mentioned, I know you were joking that no one will buy it, but you have Mallet Muse, which is your label, basically.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you this. I mean, you kind of gave me here the opportunity to ask you, how did you decide to do that? And what are the pros and cons nowadays? Like, how do you manage or deal with this?
Well, to be honest, I don't see any cons at this moment. I only see pros because number one, the record companies are all suffering.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, the big, the relatively small independent labels are suffering because number one, no one is buying CDs.
Yeah.
I mean, forget even the fact of COVID, the last year and a half or so, that which pushed everyone over the edge. But even before that, no one was buying CDs. So I talked to Matthias Winkelmann of Enya. Do you know who he is?
Yeah, Enya. Yeah.
He told me he has something like 70,000 CDs in his basement that he can't get rid of.
Well, I have like 2,000. So
yes. Well, maybe you should send them to him. So now he has
72,000. Yeah.
and it's amazing. The more people I talk to, have you heard this CD or blah blah blah? The more people tell me I don't have a CD player anymore.
Yeah.
So they're only dealing virtually with they're downloading music. And what also I've noticed lately is that people are getting more and more enthusiastic about vinyl.
Yeah, it's a comeback, yeah.
So that's why we've decided to put out our new release. The Christmas album is coming out on vinyl. You want to see it?
Yeah, please. You have it?
Hold on 1 second. Yeah. I'll be right back. I'm back. Okay, this is what it looks like. Can you see it?
Yeah, Christmas gathering. Oh, wow, beautiful. Nice cover.
Yeah, and
beautiful.
Very Christmassy. And it's a real record, you know, it's a real LP. And it's so nice to hold an LP in my hand, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you did that in the 70s already, so or even earlier, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's amazing. I have not a student, but I have a young colleague. She's an Italian classical vibraphone player. She won the first prize in a composition that I usually judge in Italy every year. Mm-hmm. Actually, I'm doing it again this year in Montesilvano. Mm-hmm. And when she won first prize, she was 16. Oh, now she's turned 18. But when she was visiting me and I showed her the record, she'd never held a record in her hand.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, yeah, sure.
Can you believe it? She was
actually,
17. Yeah. She didn't even know what wow. And when I said vinyl, she thought, that I was mentioning some sort of rare exotic plant, you know. And so I'm sure there are 16 to 17-year-olds who've never really held an LP in their hand.
Yeah, you know? Or a CD for that, you know, if we go even...
Or I'm sure it's got to the point, or even a CD, you know?
Yeah.
I remember when cassettes came out.
Yeah. Yeah.
The first person I heard talking about that was Geri Burton. I remember that we were hanging out together in a club somewhere in the Village Gate in New York, and he told me that his album is coming out on not only as a record but also on cassette, and I had no idea what that was.
Oh man, that's bizarre.
It was like a cassette. What is a cassette? It's unbelievable, you know. And then when cassettes came out on the Sony Walkman, of course remember that because you're much too young.
Oh, I do. I had it.
Did you?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So that's the situation. So the thing about having a record company of my own is, what made me do it is that I was very frustrated with a certain record company that I was dealing with here, and they didn't seem to want to put out something which I thought was a very interesting concept. And so I said, and I talked to Tilo about it, and he said, let's do a rec company ourselves. And so we did it. I mean, it's a little bit complicated in the beginning, and it costs money, but it's not unbelievably expensive. And the nice thing about it is that you have total control over the product. Yeah. We decide what we want to do. We're putting out. This year we're putting out a Mallet Muse Vintage series, and the first thing we're putting out in that series is a trio record that I did with Daniel Humair. Do you know him?
Yeah, sure. With triple hop thingy that you did.
Triple hip trip. Yeah. We did a trio record in 1991 at a jazz club in Paris. And it was a beautiful CD with this bass player, Jean-François Génie-Clark.
Yeah, sure.
Wonderful bass player. I've heard that. It's a beautiful record. It's called Ternaire.
Yeah.
And it's not available anymore. And so we remixed and mastered it, and it's going to come out on Mallet Muse, I think, probably in September.
That's beautiful.
So that's going to be the Mallet Muse Vintage series, and we're doing this record. Our new Clara has her own trio record that is coming out, and then we're doing our record, and I did a duo record with Rob Waring, who's a very, very wonderful vibraphone player who lives in Norway. He's an American, and we've been doing some vibraphone and marimba duos, so a mixture of written stuff and improvisation.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So those are the three releases that are planned.
No, that's beautiful.
For, for up until around October, December, and of course the Christmas record is coming out in November.
Yeah, yeah, but you're doing then vinyl, CD, and probably Bandcamp and all the digital platforms, right?
Yeah, well, I don't think we're doing any more CDs.
Oh wow, really? Wow.
I don't think so. I mean, the question is, do we want to do a CD again? And my feeling is either we do downloads, or vinyl.
Yeah.
And the thing about vinyl is that's something that people can sell on gigs.
Of course.
If gigs happening in which they seem to be happening, then we can sell them on gigs, and people can download. But I don't see any future for CDs, to be honest.
Interesting.
It's funny. Everyone's, there's still people who give you their CD. Oh man, here's my CD.
Yeah, exactly.
And I immediately take the CD and I put it on my shelf. Here, thank you so much. I mean, I still have actually, I bought a new CD player last year, but and I still enjoy occasionally listening to CDs. But since I got a record player,
it's a different experience.
About 6 months ago, that I love listening to vinyl again. It's just a totally different listening experience.
Yeah, it's a process. Like I tell my students also, everyone is on their phones and they're just like, skip a tune after 2 minutes or whatever, and or shuffle through it. And I was like, vinyl and CD for me, when a CD came out, I put it on and it was like a procedure. I read the booklet if there was any, and like it was man. You couldn't.
You remember when CDs came out?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I remember. Yeah, I mean, I'm 42 now, so
you're 42. You look young. You look very young.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So it's like I remember that stuff. Like you couldn't buy anything, right? I mean,
it's true.
Download, and in Slovenia especially, I don't know. Buying a Wayne Shorter CD, a Blue Note, reissue. I was like, man. I have it.
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, yeah. I mean, the CDs were like
bizarre.
There was like the iPod. Remember?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then there was, what was the other format? Small CD. What was it called?
Data? No.
But I remember dots as well. I remember buying a DAT recorder. Like,
exactly.
Man, this is great quality, and it was and people, and mixing stuff to DAT and stuff like that. All that is gone now.
Exactly.
Now people, I just saw that people are showing some interest in buying old reel-to-reel machines.
Really? Oh wow!
Tape machines. Yeah. And the question is, where do you get tape? But I saw something on Facebook, I think, where people, a couple of people are starting to show some interest in buying like the old reel-to-reel machines.
Wow.
And recording them.
Well, that if this brings back some of the old romanticism and
sure,
real, I guess why not? Yeah. Beautiful.
We're going back to our roots, Soon we'll do away with telephones and we'll just use drums, to communicate, and then we'll use stones,
I wouldn't mind that actually. Like get rid of the phones and stuff.
Get rid of the phones. Yeah.
People are just like that on the street. The youngers, like walking.
Tell me about it. Yeah, it's true.
But David, I want to ask you. I listened to the Generations Trio and Quartet, and all you guys wrote music for both albums actually.
Yes.
And you also wrote some beautiful tunes, and I wanted to ask you, like, that National Pride is beautiful, the melody and changes, and there's one recycling, I think it's called the 3/4 kind of, I love that stuff. I listened to it many times, and I wanted to ask you, like, what's your procedure when writing music? Let's say for this group, or even earlier, how do you start? Do you start with a melody, with changes on a computer, on vibes, or?
It depends on what kind of tune I'm writing. I mean, it's generally, some people wait for an inspiration and then they feel like, they're inspired, then they sit down. I never do that actually, because I'm rarely inspired to write. To me, writing is kind of like something like doing the dishes, It's like work. And so I generally sit down and say, okay, I have to write something. for the band. You know, we need new tunes, you know.
Yeah.
And then unfortunately I sit at the piano, and every time I sit at the piano, I kind of have a guilty conscience in a certain sense, because I remember I used to play with Luciano Berio, you know, the famous contemporary composer, and I remember being in his ensemble in the 60s, in the Juilliard ensemble, and we were also friends, and I lived in his house for a while, and he used to tell me, he said, a real composer never composes at the piano. And it's funny that I never forgot that when he said that to me. And every time I sit down at the piano to write something, I always have a mild pang of guilt, you know, because I think of Luciano and thinking, I'm not a real composer, you know.
Oh man. Yeah.
I mean, I've tried writing away from the piano as well, and it works. I think for certain things, like if you're just writing like lines or something like that. Yeah. I mean, there is a way of composing away from the piano, and even a way of composing lines where you don't worry so much about the individual pitches, but you're more interested in shapes.
Yeah,
that's kind of an interesting thing to do. Gil Goldstein, I don't know if you know who he is. He wrote a composition book.
Yeah,
he wrote a book on describe, you know, like a way of diagramming melodies. So there is a way to do that. I do that occasionally, but most of the time I sit at the piano or the vibes.
Okay.
And because I'm very much a harmonic thinker.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the melody is really important, but I'm really someone who needs to think and write harmonically.
Yeah.
And I'm really interested in like a kind of like emotional harmonic connections.
Yeah, I noticed that. Yeah, beautiful harmonies you have in the tunes always.
Yeah.
Like, really
so that to me, I mean, the rhythm thing is important, but I would actually say that if I put everything on a scale, you know, on the priority list, I mean, the harmony is for me almost the most prevalent, most important thing, because I love to figure out harmonies that move in an emotional tension release kind of way. So I'm at the piano, and of course then I check things on the vibes, because I realize that, you know, if it's for a trio with no piano, I mean, I'm the guy who's doing the accompaniment, so I have to make sure that I can play the stuff on the vibes too. Sure. You know, because sometimes the trouble with the piano is, when you're composing, number one, it gives you a false sense of reality. You know, that means because the piano is, you know, when you play, you know, a chord with 8 fingers or something like that, you know, you have an orchestral sound that you can't duplicate on the vibes.
Yeah,
you just
exactly.
can't. And you know, unless you're a piano player, then it's something else. But so I always realize this is not reality. This is something else. So I make sure that I check it out in the vibes, if this will work at all, if certain harmonic, you know, a certain harmonic movement is possible that way. And so I'm generally I kind of create a melody and the harmony at the same time. Yeah. You know, it's rare that I will write a melody and then harmonize it.
Oh, okay.
But it's more, I think it's probably more probable that I'll write a harmonic progression and think of a melody to go over it. Yeah, because as I say, I'm so driven by harmonic movement. You know, that's something. Sometimes I think, okay, the melody is important. You know, so I might have an amazingly interesting harmonic movement, and then I'll put a melody over it. And then if I find that the melody is weaker than the harmonic movement, then I'll work on the melody. You know.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
It's interesting when we did the Christmas album, there's a very traditional Christmas song called "Away in the Manger."
Oh yeah, I know that one. Yeah, it's a beautiful one.
You know that?
Yeah, sure. We do you know, we do Christmas concerts at my music school every year. So I have a list like of 30 carol songs and.
Okay. Well, nobody in my band knew it. and nobody here in Germany knows it, you know.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, it's a very simple song, and I totally reharmonized it. And I did it as a duo between me and Clara.
Oh,
you know, and it has like a little like 4-bar intro, and then the harmonies are really, really bizarre, you know, and the solo form over which I improvise is even more bizarre than the harmonies for the melody. So it was, I really like it. It was unbelievably difficult to improvise over. So, I mean, I have my own concept of how to improvise on very complicated harmonies, you know, so, but anyway, so that's my composition process. I know there are other people who have, you know, composers who have other processes of creating music. You know, some people write on the computer. I remember John Hollenbeck, who was teaching here at school.
Yeah, I played with John a lot. Yeah.
You played with John?
Oh, we did like 2 records together and toured a lot. Yeah, sure.
Oh, okay. Well, you know, so you know about, you know, he's
an
very
amazing
accomplished composer.
Yeah.
And he's a very heady guy and very smart. And so I'm sure that he would think that, you know, the idea of sitting down at the piano and writing is totally old-fashioned and, you know, kind of retro, you know. But that's what I do. I mean, you know, he also writes. I mean, in the old days, I played so much contemporary music and graphic compositions. Yeah. And when I was playing with Danielle, we used to do, and Jane Ira Bloom, we used to do linear pieces with no harmonies, you know, which at one point really interested me, you know, just playing, you know, very intricate lines, you know, kind of like Bach, where the harmonic material is contained within the lines. You know? So, I mean, all that is there, and I wrote a couple of the Thursday Lines, you know, that song.
Probably, if I heard it now,
Well, that's a piece without any harmony. It's just line.
Yeah, that's different.
It's just a line, you know. Yeah. That so you know, and it's an interesting line that just moves in strange intervals and stuff like that. I love that kind of stuff, Ornetti kind of thing.
Ornettish kind of, You know?
I love that too. That's something I really love to do too. So I have those kind of 2 interests. One is, you know, deeply contained in harmony, and the other one is just playing like lines, you know. So.
And it's always been like that, you know. If I listen, I don't know, to the Swiss Celebration that you did like late 70s.
Oh my God.
You know.
Yeah, well, the Swiss Celebration, you know, the Swiss that tune, I think I created on the spot just playing with Danielle. That was just 4 chords.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
You know, and then very 70s. You know, I would never write anything like that now. But if you look on the record I did with Chet Baker, there's a piece I wrote called 3 + 1 = 5, and it also was called Syzygies, and I recorded that with Chet.
That's the one with Buster and Joe.
That was just a line, also with a bass line that I wrote to it, and you basically improvise over the intervals, and that was interesting playing that with Chet, because Chet had never ever done that, and his wife told me that was the very first time that he'd ever improvised on a tune with no chord changes.
How did he react when you shown him that?
Well, he was very low key. You know, he just started playing on it, and Enya put out that record, and they put out also the alternate take as well, and I was playing marimba, and Chet was playing, you know, kind of a very melodic, but solo without any particular harmonic direction. He always insinuated a harmonic direction. I mean, he always. You know, because that was he was used to, but I thought it was really successful with him. I'd recorded it once before on my own record with Ronnie Burrage and
with Geri. I love that record.
Although on that tune it was only Ronnie Burrage and Anthony Cox.
Ah, okay. But you mentioned Chet Baker now, and how did this collaboration with him happen actually?
The Chet Baker collaboration happened because Matthias Winkelmann, he came to my house. I was living in New York. He was visiting New York. Actually, when Matthias, do you know Matthias Winkelmann? You know who he is. You know,
yeah.
Well,
sure.
when he used to come to New York, he stayed at my place often.
Oh,
We were old friends. And he said he wanted to do a record with Chet using my compositions. And I said, yeah, great, you know, unbelievable. And originally, they were supposed to do it with a pianist whose name I won't mention because Chet didn't feel comfortable with him. There was some weird vibes at the rehearsal, so he decided not to use him. And then he asked me if I wanted to do it, because, you know, so I was actually the second choice, but it was fine with me.
Yeah.
So, and this pianist is very well known, and but Chet didn't feel comfortable with him. So
yeah, sure.
So I said I would love to do it. Yeah, absolutely. So I wrote some pieces, and I didn't, you know, and Matthias gave me Chet's number in New York, and I called him, and he was very nice. I said, you know, this is David Friedman. We're recording this album together, and I'd like to come by and show you my tunes. And he said, yeah, man, come by, you know. So I went by his house. This was, I think, in 1985. And he opened the door for me in his bathrobe, you know. And I came inside, and I naively put, you know, I saw his piano, and I put the music on the piano, and I sat down, you know, and I said, okay, do you want to try these tunes? Do you want to get your trumpet? He said, man, you know, I don't have a trumpet.
Oh, man.
You don't have a trumpet?
That's so sad. Yeah.
He sold his trumpet, you know.
Man.
So I just showed him some of the stuff where he was mildly interested. And then we met in the studio 2 days later.
Wow.
Where he didn't show up. The first day he didn't show up, and then nobody knew where he was. And the second, so we recorded the entire album in one day.
Oh man, that's bizarre.
And I wrote a beautiful, and I think I wrote a very nice duo tune for us. A very short. Again, you know, this. It was the melody was very simple, but it had some really nice harmonies, and just vibes and trumpet. In fact, I'm really proud of the fact that I've played duo with two of the greatest trumpet players in the world. One was Chet, and the other one was Kenny Wheeler.
Yeah, oh man, I love that record. Yeah, with Kenny.
You know that record?
Yeah,
Jasper
sure.
And Kenny.
Yeah, wow. I wanted to ask you how you actually started playing with Kenny. I mean, Kenny for me is like, you know, when I do these interviews, I've talked with so many people who recorded and played with Kenny, and you know, and everyone, you know, is just speaking amazing praise of Kenny. And for me, he's one of the best composers and players. And
I
love that. Greenhouse Fables, right? Is the record. Yeah.
And you're one of the few people I know who knows that record.
I'm such a huge fan of Kenny's, but I wanted to ask you, since you mentioned him, how was it playing with him, and how did you come up together? Actually,
I mean, Kenny and I and Jasper, we did, and also I think, did we do something with John Taylor as well? But I know that Jasper, Kenny, and I, we did like maybe 6 or 7 concerts together.
Oh, wow.
That's or more even, I think, over a period of 1.5 years or something like that. We did a fair amount of concerts together. And I mean, I loved playing with Kenny. First place, he was an absolutely lovely, unbelievably modest, very, very quiet person, you know, but a really, really sweet guy. And of course, playing with him was a dream. You know,
yeah, the lines, right?
And he was just the most unique player, one of the most unique players I've ever played with.
Yeah,
you know,
I agree.
And he told me when he did that recording New High.
Yeah,
you
sure.
know, with Keith Jarrett playing. He said that he felt that Keith was kind of bored throughout the whole session, you know, kind of, you know, he really didn't have, he wasn't able to establish a real rapport with Keith when they were in the studio, but he said in retrospect, it was a wonderful recording.
Yeah. Yeah. He's done so much work, like the large ensembles and all that stuff.
Great. And of course, his compositions. I mean, I used to love to play everybody's song but my own. You know?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah.
I've never recorded that tune, but I love that. I love that tune, and that's one of the most challenging pieces. I played that quite a bit with John Taylor. I did a
really
duo concert. Yeah.
Oh man, I love John. One of the greats.
I used to play a lot in trio with Charlie, Mariano, John Taylor, and myself.
Really? Oh man, did you guys ever record or no?
Never. And I don't even know if there's any recorded material. You know.
Oh, that's a shame.
So that's
beautiful.
That was great, and the thing in. When we recorded Greenhouse Fables, that was wonderful. Also recorded that in Italy in a very nice studio there.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I mean, you've played. You mentioned Chet Baker, and I mean, we both did now, and Kenny, and you know, I have you on so many records, and also checked who you played with. It's. I wanted to ask you this about the '70s in New York. I did this talk with Randy Brecker as well, and you know. When you check what you guys did, or like what Randy's book probably looked like, diary, went to record and went to play gigs.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you also that because, you know, you're like on half of the CTI records from early 70s.
Right.
And how did this story begin for you, like when coming to New York and becoming part of the scene?
Well, I never came to New York because I was born in New York. So
you were born in? Okay.
No, I was always. I mean, I lived in New York until I came here.
Oh, okay. I thought you were outside from. Oh, okay.
No, I was very lucky because when I was 11 years old, I decided to study drums, and I had a wonderful drum teacher who became like a father to me in a sense. And his name was Stanley Carell, and he was a Broadway show drummer, basically.
Wow. Okay.
And he was one of these guys who said to me, he said, you know, okay, you know, you're becoming a really good drummer, but if you want to be a complete musician, you have to play marimba and xylophone, you know. And I remember telling him, I said, oh, I don't want to do that. And he said, no, I'm going to have to start giving you lessons. And I remember I hated it in the very beginning. And then, you know, I just looked at these, you know, these bars, and it was like a desert, you know, with you know, where's the oasis? I just see like, you know, miles of nothingness that I I cannot relate to. But I did get into it. At one point, it made like a click, and then I realized that was my true love, and I kind of put the drums a little bit in the background. And at one point when I started studying with him when I was 11. When I was about 18 and started going to Juilliard, he became one of the biggest jingle producers in New York.
Wow, okay.
You know what jingles are, right?
Sure.
They're like TV commercials.
Sure.
And which meant that he was recording all the jingles for Pan Am and for all the American products, you know, including McDonald's and blah blah blah. Well, he didn't do McDonald's, but so he started hiring me to do jingles, and I wasn't at all ready to do that.
Oh, that's
because it's really, you know, I was going in the studio with all these great, amazing players, you know, and at that time there were a lot of, you know, like the drummer O.C. Johnson. Do you remember him?
But just by name,
Him. People like Dick Hyman and who was Woody Allen's musical director and a great pianist and arranger himself. And all the Irby Green and Bernie Glow, all the old studio guys, Mundell Lowe, the guitar player.
Sure, I know him.
Mundell was playing guitar, and here I was, 18, you know, totally green behind the ears, and playing playing things and fucking it up, and you know, and remember one arranger, you know, stopped and went to my teacher and said, "Look, the kid isn't cutting it," you know. And he said, just give him a chance, keep going, you know. And I ended up doing it, and so I kind of got a tremendous amount of experience in playing in the studios, and then I started working for other people and got to know, and that's where you met a lot of amazing musicians.
Yeah,
like people like Randy and Michael Steve Gadd, and later, you know, all the cats, you know, John Faddis, and all the drummers, Chris Parker, Steve, Rick Murata, and Don Grolnick. We were all at one point. This is, of course, much later. This is in our middle 20s, and we were all, you know, kind of like these kind of studio musicians who were, and it was a community. And that's where I met Hubert Laws. You know.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you that. Yeah.
And I met Hubert on a record, because Hubert was also, he did a lot of jingles and recordings as well. You know, and we were on. I think we were. Peter Erskine was playing drums, or maybe not. I can't remember. And Hubert said, "Hey, let's." In the break, we played Green Dolphin Street together. You know.
Yeah.
And then he hired me to be in his band.
Wow, that's how it happened. Yeah, I love
that. That's how I got involved with CTI.
With Billy and Ron Carter.
Yeah, with Hubert, and then and at that time in his band was Gene Bertoncini on guitar, and Ron Carter. And mixture of different drummers: Idris Muhammad, Freddie Waits, Steve Gadd, Jack DeJohnette played on one recording, and then I mean, I did so many different kinds. And then Don Sebeski was the arranger, and I did so many. You know, and then Don would hire me to do records with George Benson. And
I wanted to ask you that. Yeah, that's how you got involved with George. Also, that record is beautiful.
Yeah, but I never met George.
Ah, you just did like your part.
Yeah, I just played on this tune, Good Came Bad, and then, or whatever the tune was called. You know, I just played a solo, like an 8-bar or 16-bar solo. Came in and left, and I did a lot of that with CTI. In fact, there was even a recording once where there was a Milt Jackson record called, is it Little Sunflower? I can't remember this, and there was a tune that Milt was playing something and the melody wasn't correct or something like that. And so Don called me in, or maybe it was Creed, to come in and just play the melody the way Milt would play it. And
come on.
At the studio, there were some of Milt's mallets, you know, like these kind of mallets. He used to use these Freddie Albright mallets. Mm-hmm. And I just played the melody and then left, you know, and Milt never even knew.
Oh my God.
He never even knew.
That's amazing.
So that was, you know, and then, and I remember like, I mean, I was always recording at Rudy Van Gelder Studios, which mostly stuff, you know, for Hubert. I mean, we did this record with this arranger, who's the guy from California who was a Latin specialist, the pianist, you know, I'm talking about. Great. He wrote Pensativa.
Oh yeah. Not Claire Fisher.
Claire Fisher.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So yeah, and he was always one of my idols, and I got called. Who called me for that? Maybe. No, it wasn't Don, because Claire Fisher was the arranger. Anyway, I got called to do. Oh, it was Hubert. Hubert called me because he said, "We're doing a new album of Claire Fisher arrangements," and Claire was there as well. Yeah. You know, and it was so much fun working with him, and he was such a great guy. And there were some interesting things that happened. Rudy Van Gelder, who you know who he is, right?
Yeah, sure.
He was very much a kind of obsessive compulsive when it had to do with you know, certain like cleanliness, and you know, he would never allow anyone to touch his microphones. Whenever he came out to adjust a microphone, he always came out with gloves on.
Wow.
You know, and then he'd move the microphone around, and so and I had a tendency sometimes, if I got excited, I would kind of play like that, and the microphones were too low, and I hit one of the microphones with my mallet. He stopped the recording, and he came out and he said to me, "If you do that again, you're not gonna play on any of my recordings."
Wow.
And I was freaking out, and Hubert came up to me and he said, don't worry about it. You know, it's like, you know, there were several situations like that, and I was very young, and you know, and we were playing some unbelievably difficult shit. We recorded these Don Sebesky arrangements of Bach concertos where I was playing.
That's record.
Sight reading that stuff, you know, and having to play it, and of course, and then you hit a microphone, and then he comes out and does a number on my head. You weren't allowed to, when you went into the control room to listen to the takes, you couldn't bring coffee in.
Oh man,
no coffee in the control room. You couldn't, you know, and you know, Rudy was constantly polishing surfaces, and you know, and he was a total pain in the ass, but he was, you know.
Yeah, he did what.
But he was the cat, you know. He was the guy who was he did. Look how many great albums he recorded.
Yeah, all the Blue Note stuff and everything. Yeah.
And Creed also did.
Yeah.
Creed also did. I mean, he was kind of like the pre-ECM kind of like, you know, they'd always talk about the Creed Taylor sound, you know, which I never liked in terms of the sound he had on drums. I hated his drum sound. There were a couple of. I remember there was a tune that we recorded, Origin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Sonny.
Which was a duo with Hubert and Steve Gadd. Mm-hmm. And Steve played, of course, great, but the drums, I didn't like the drum sound. You know,
all these records, Freddie's also, and Ron Carter's records, and all this. It's like beautiful absolutely. Music, but the sound is like nah.
The sound is weird.
Yeah.
And but I did some amazing records out there in Englewood Cliffs, New Jersey, and brought friends. At that point, Dave Samuels, who was my partner. Mm-hmm. I had a record date, and at that point, John Scofield was kind of new, and I remember taking Dave Samuels and John Scofield with me in the car.
Seriously,
so they could watch. You know,
wow, that's amazing.
You know? Yeah,
that's beautiful.
It was really fun. Yeah, so that was a very interesting time.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned like part of the recordings you did, like you played also on Wayne Shorter's and Horace Silver's record. I love the Horace Silver.
You know, one. The interesting thing, the Horace Silver record, Randy and I auditioned the same day for that session.
Ah, really?
I remember it was Lynn Oliver Studios in New York, and we had to audition. I remember going in and seeing Randy, and me, and I think Michael came later or something like that, and we, I don't know if we auditioned together. But and Horace was really nice. I think Randy auditioned first, and I auditioned because he used us on different tunes.
Mm-hmm,
you know? And I remember having to sight read and play over this tune, "Summer in Central Park."
Yeah, I love that one, and Cathy, like some beautiful tunes. And
I got the gig, and playing with Mickey Roker and
Bob Cranston, right?
Oh, it was amazing. Yeah. It was really fun. And Horace was a great guy. And what I love about that session, that I got Horace to really, we did a vamp on this tune. Oh, I can't remember the tune, but it had a long out vamp at the end. Sure. And we just, and I got him to just play, and it got more and more out. You know, I was playing, we were trading ideas, and I thought to myself, well, that's the first time I heard Horace Silver do that. So I think you know, I was able to get Chet Baker to play a line, to play improvise, and I got Horace Silver to play some out interaction.
That's the right.
So that was really great. That was a wonderful experience for me.
Did you play gigs with Horace then also, like?
We never played
okay.
gigs. No. We just did that record.
Yeah. And how was the Wayne Shorter experience? Like
the Wayne Shorter experience was interesting because how did I get hired for that? I don't remember. I just know that it even could be either Duke. Who called me for that? Duke Pearson. Someone called me, or maybe even Wayne called me. I can't remember. And maybe it was Wayne. And he wanted me to play Vibes and Steve Kahn. Do you know the
sure. I love him. Yeah.
Steve convinced me. At that time, Steve was living at my place. Because when Steve came to New York, he was living at my place first.
Oh.
So Steve said, and then I was dabbling with electric vibes, you know, with electronic pickups.
Yeah.
And he said, why don't you bring your pickups bring the vibes with the pickups. I'll help you. And because I was totally new, and Steve, you know, knew more about it than I did, and he came with me to the gig, to the date, and he helped me set it up. And I remember playing kind of like electric vibes with pickups, and Wayne really liked it. And Bobby Thomas, the drummer, thought it was great. Yeah. And so we recorded the album. What I regret that I was so intimidated on that recording that I felt I could have played out more. I was much too reticent. You know, I was much too shy about.
You were still in your mid-20s, right? Actually.
Yeah, yeah, and I could have played a little bit more aggressively than I did, but you know, it was what it was. You know.
Yeah, it's still
good experience.
Yeah,
good experience playing with 2 drummers. Yeah,
that's been amazing.
Yeah.
Now, I wanted to ask you this now. When did you decide to become a band leader? You know, that track Winter Love, I think, is the first one you did, and April Joy, right?
That's the very first date that I ever did on my own, and that was offered to me by, do you know Masabumi Kikuchi? Do you know
sure. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. He called me and said,
really?
He was my neighbor.
Oh, okay.
Okay, when I lived on 21st Street between 7th and 8th Avenue, Pooh lived next door, you know.
Yeah.
In fact, and we were friends with Harvie Swartz. Pooh and myself were kind of friends.
Oh yeah, I wanted to ask you your connection with Harvie also.
Yeah. Well, I actually met. I can't remember if I met Pooh through Harvie, but anyway, so he asked me to do this record. Do you want to do a solo record for a company called East Wind, which he was producing it. And Pooh was at that time, he was playing with Teru Masuhino, and he was doing all this, you know. Pooh was very much into the whole Miles Davis thing. I remember, and he had very specific taste in music. You know, he loved, of course, he loved Coltrane and stuff like that. And I remember once he asked me, he was at my house, and he says to me, what saxophone player you like? And I said, oh, I love Cannonball. I was really into Cannonball at that time.
Really?
Because
oh, wow.
I loved the way he phrased, and I was trying to all the phrasing I know, other than playing classical music, I learned from saxophone players.
Yeah, sure.
You know? I listened to Jane Ira Bloom, and I used to love the way Cannonball phrased. You know, I mean, just the way he could make phrases really sing, and I wanted to do them the vibe. So he was a big influence on me, and Pooh said, "What saxophone player you like?" And I said, "Oh, I love Cannonball." He said, "Oh, really?" He was very disappointed in me. Because he thought I would say Steve Grossman.
Yeah, okay, one of the Liebman or whoever. Yeah.
Liebman, or Coltrane, or Joe Henderson, and I guess he didn't have tremendous respect for Cannonball, although I love Cannonball. Yeah, I still do, by the way.
Yeah.
So I think that Pooh wanted me to do a record with drums and bass. He wanted me to do like a jazz record, a jazz record. And at that time, I was playing with Dave Samuels in duo, and I was playing with Hubert Laws, and I was playing with Harvie Swartz. Yeah. So I said, I'm going to do a record with all those guys, no drums.
Makes sense. Yeah.
And we do all these tunes, just with marimba and vibes, and we did April Joy with Hubert.
Yeah.
And I remember Pooh sitting in the control room, bored to tears. He hated everything about that record. At one point, I came in and he was like this. Because that was not at all his idea of what jazz was. His idea of jazz was, it's like, total. But that's what it was. So the record came out, and I'm sure that he hated it. He was the producer. East Wind asked him to produce it, but I thought there's some beautiful stuff on that record.
Yeah,
and I really liked the thing with Hubert as well.
Hubert, such a player, man. Really, yes.
Oh yeah, Hubert is an amazing. I mean, he's still an amazing flute player. I did, about 4 years ago, he came to Berlin.
Really? Oh, wow.
And I did, and there was a guy, I forget his name. I did a record with him. He would, I can't remember what label it was for, but he hired me to do for some recording like 4 years ago. And Hubert was in town, and Hubert and I played together with a bass player, Peter Bounce, who lives here in Berlin. And we did a couple of really nice tunes, and I hadn't seen Hubert in 25 years.
Amazing.
You know, so that was really nice. Yeah, so that's how that came about.
And that's basically then when Double Image was also formed on the basis of this, right?
Double Image was actually grew out of the Winter Love April Joy, I think. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then we tried a percussionist. There was a guy in New York, Armin Halburian. I can't believe I remember his name. The pills are working. Armin Halburian, and we did something with Harvie and David and myself and Armin, and then we, for some reason, the thing with Armin wasn't working out, and we hired Michael DePasqua.
Yeah, I love Dawn. I love Dawn, man.
Oh yeah,
ECM, that's such a beautiful record you guys did. Yeah.
Yeah, but first we did the Double Image.
Double Image, yeah.
And that band, that was an amazing band because we rehearsed every day. Sometimes we rehearsed from 11 at night until 4 in the morning. And the reason we did that was because some of us were doing like studio music during the day, so we had no time. You know, we were doing gigs during the day, and I remember that my kids were really small, or one, and you know, I rehearsed all night and get up, you know, in the morning and go and do jingles, and we rehearsed unbelievably much, and got really these unbelievably complicated long compositions together, and we played without music, which was amazing, and just did and yeah, it was a very interesting band.
Yeah, it's a lovely, unique combination in the world of jazz. You know, it's how did the story with Manfred happen with ECM? That one for that Dawn record.
Yeah, Manfred, he offered us a record. I don't know how it happened. I don't know how it happened, but I remember the conversation with Matthias Winkelmann. We were all at my place in New York, and I remember telling Matthias that we were going with ECM. And he was really pissed off. Oh, man. His words were, I think, something like, "Yeah, I was trying to be very, you know." I said, and then at one point he said to me, "So you're going with ECM, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Fuck you," something like that. But we stayed friends. And the trouble is that this record, Dawn, you know, when we went with ECM, we had the opportunity to get the same manager that Oregon had.
Oh wow, really? Oh wow.
Yeah, he was a very good guy who managed Oregon, and he also booked some concerts for Keith Jarrett.
Ah, okay.
His name was Burl Crone. His name is. He was a very big. He was managing a lot of big groups, and when we recorded Dawn, we got back to New York, and he called me and said, "I can't manage you. I mean, how can you make a record where the first tune is 10 minutes long?" He said, "That's ridiculous. You won't get any airplay." He said, "Forget it. I'm not working with you."
Wow. Funny, because like all those early ECM, like Garbarix, you know, Eberhard Webert's, is like songs are like 15 minutes long. And
yeah, probably. Yeah, but then people, you know, they often give some thought to the fact that because a lot of, you know, at that point, you know, people in radio stations, they play the first tune. You know?
Yeah, of course.
And if the first tune is 15 minutes, then they don't play the record, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway, that record kind of disappeared in a certain sense. I thought it was a very interesting record. And Manfred, I remember being in the studio and what Manfred didn't like jazz, basically. You know, he doesn't like jazz. He liked the fact that we were doing different fields and different stuff. Anything that wasn't jazz, he really was excited about it. Yeah, I mean, I had some bizarre experiences with him. Also recording this record for John Clark.
Hmm.
I did a record for John Clark, who was a New York horn player.
Yeah, no, yeah. Oh, really?
And called Faces or something like that.
I have to check it out.
And we recorded for ECM, and Manfred hated that. And in fact, and I was only a sideman. We became the record was me and I shouldn't say me first. They always say the Germans the Germans never say me for. They always say
exactly
Hans und Greta und Philip und ich.
Yeah.
So, and Americans egocentric as the other thing. So me and Randy, you know. So it was John Clark, a cellist named David Darling.
Oh yeah, I love that. Wow, seriously.
Yeah.
Wow.
And Jan Christensen on drums.
Really, man, I have to check this record out.
Yeah, well, I think the record's been discontinued, but you can try to find it. It's okay, John Clark. It's called Faces.
I have to write this
and Manfred hated it.
Wow.
And he would pull me aside, although I was a sideman. He used to pull me aside and he'd say, "David, what can we do to save this? We have to save this." I said to him, Manfred, you know, I'm a sideman. You got to talk to John, you know. Yeah. Maybe we can try a free piece. Let's do a free piece. You know. It was pretty odd.
That's so bizarre. Yeah, you mentioned your sideman work. You liked or still like being a sideman, like compared to being a band leader. What's your standpoint?
What I love about being a sideman is I don't worry about
you show up and that's
just playing my thing. You know, it's very liberating. As a leader, you know, you have to think about so many things, and sometimes music is the last thing that you have to think about. And I love it when someone calls me. What I used to love is going in and overdubbing. That they don't do that anymore. And I was like the house vibraphone player for CTI, and I used to love. And also, and I did. I mean, for other people too. I mean, I remember in the 70s and early 80s, always in the studio recording like solos for people like Laura Nero, who was a cult singer.
And with Chic,
Ian,
with that group Chic, or was that wrong?
And for Nile, you know.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing.
And Nile Rodgers, I mean, he called me for a lot, you know, for playing with Chic and stuff like that, and just coming in and overdubbing solo. I love it because I go in and the challenge was always, you know, I'd always say, they say, well, here's the music. I said, you know what? Let me try one take just listening and with no music and see what happens. And I always enjoyed that more because it always was the most organic of all the takes. And then if I fucked up, then I'd use music.
Sure.
But it was very. I love doing that overdub thing and the whole studio thing. I really love doing that. Doing stuff with Don Sebesky, you know, I mean, at that time, you know, playing complicated stuff in the studio was very nerve-wracking. But so I liked, you know, when you go in and improvise a solo. I love that. And I did that on so many people's records, folk people, jazz people. I had an interesting experience when I recorded, at that time, Leonard Bernstein recorded his Mass.
Wow,
you know,
okay.
And it's a very famous recording. And he recorded in a huge studio in New York, and he was using there was like 15 percussion players, the percussion section from the New York Philharmonic, the percussion section from the New York City Ballet, from the Metropolitan. They were all there, all the cats, you know.
Yeah.
And I was playing vibraphone. I was just playing vibraphone. And I remember in the break, you know, and I was sitting and I was just playing. I think at that time I was really young, maybe 23, and I just graduated from Juilliard, and I was just playing some tunes, you know, and all of a sudden I see there's someone standing next to me, you know, a small, like a guy, kind of a short guy, and I turn around, it's Leonard Bernstein. He's standing right next to me, and he says to me, he said, "I bet you never learned to do that at Juilliard," and then he walked away.
Wow.
And for years and years, I always wondered, how did he know that I went to Juilliard? Leonard Bernstein knew that I went to Juilliard? That was amazing. Yeah. That was my one encounter with Leonard Bernstein. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Yeah. It's amazing. You're not to take too much of your time, David. I just have, you know, you've done so much work. I just wanted to ask you some more questions.
Yeah,
like,
go ahead.
You being a band leader, how do you decide which projects to do, or especially in the past, like, you know, Rios with Dino and Other Worlds with...
I wasn't for that thing. I was not a band leader. That was actually Dino's project.
I was Dino's project. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it actually was. Well, I mean, that's not true either. It was kind of like
collab.
Vera Brandes asked for. That's not true. How did I? Oh, I know how that got. Dino and I, we met at Charlie Mariano's 70th birthday party.
Ah, well, okay.
And there was a concert in Cologne that was given for Charlie Mariano's 70th birthday party. And Dino was there, and John Taylor, and this oud player, Rabbi Abi Khalil.
Oh, sure, Rabbi Abu Khalil, of course.
Yeah, right. Abu Khalil was there. And everyone, and we all played together, and different groups played. We did Everybody's Song But My Own, just with Charlie, myself, and John Taylor. Mm-hmm. And then Dino did something with Charlie, because they were playing. And what was the German piano player? They did a record together. And I said to Dino, I said, I would love to do something with you. And for some reason, and at some point, I think Vera Brandes called and said that we should do something together, and the producer was Lee. I can't remember the guy from California who produced Schofield's records. Lee
Townsend? No.
Lee Townsend.
Townsend, yeah.
And Lee Townsend produced the record, and I think I recommended Anthony Cox.
Yeah, how did you know Anthony? From New York, right?
Yeah, and it's a trio record. But I got the feeling it was kind of like Dino's kind of project. So, but I wrote music for it. And,
yeah, it's beautiful stuff. Yeah.
Oh, it's a beautiful, and then we ended up going on tour. You know.
Oh, you played actually then also. Wow.
We did. We went to Italy. We went to Germany. We toured in Germany. We toured for like about a half a year. Yeah. And then Dino got problems with ECM.
Yeah, sure.
They told him basically to stop.
Yeah, sure. He did ECM record.
You know, and they were kind of like holding his financial purse. They had his, you know, so he did, unfortunately, which I thought was a shame, because I loved playing with him. Yeah, because so beautiful. What I loved about Dino was that he loved to play slow and soft.
Yeah.
And I mean, he loved this idea of just playing a ballad like so slow and playing so soft. You know, he used to love, and he hated people who played fast and furious. He told me, he said to me once, he said, you know, David, I was talking to Paquito de Rivera, you know, and I said to him, hey, man, he said, why you play so fast? You have somewhere to go? You know,
that's a good one.
That was Dino. And I just loved that. I mean, not everyone was into it, but I just love this whole space and of course when you play mallet instruments softly like marimba and vibraphone, they sound beautiful.
Completely different sound. Yeah,
it's gorgeous, and I love the blend with the bandoneon.
Yeah. You know, it's also with Jean-Louis when you played the accordion combination.
That's what gave me the idea to do with Jean-Louis Matinier, because of playing with Dino.
Yeah, I love that record.
Recreate that, but I couldn't find an improvising bandoneon player.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So I found Jean-Louis Matinier, who was
master,
just as good.
Yeah,
and a wonderful player.
Yeah, that's a beautiful record.
Yeah. So so that's how that happened. And you asked, well, when does one decide to become a band leader? For vibraphone players, if you want to work, you have to be a band leader. Because,
nowadays, maybe
I was very lucky. I'm one of the few vibraphone players that was asked so many times to be a sideman, but that's only because of the recording industry. Yeah. You know, it's not that people always called me for gigs, but they called me for recordings.
Yeah.
I mean, I did some gigs. I mean, I played, I did a couple of gigs with Joe Farrell and I did, You know, like different people called me to Eddie Daniels and Harvie and I had a band for a while.
Really?
But but we were band leaders. But it was rare that I would be called to do gigs with somebody, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was called for recording. So if a vibe player wants to work, you got to get your own band together. And that's why most vibe players are band leaders.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you have like, it's a rare thing like with Dave Holland and Steve Nelson or something like that.
For instance,
Steve never had a band of his own, I don't think. But most vibe players, look at all the vibe players. They're all band leaders.
Yeah.
Gary Burton, Mike Manieri, myself, Dave Pike. I mean, Milt Jackson, aside from the Modern Jazz Quartet, which as far as I'm concerned was his band. But
Bobby Hutcherson did.
And Bobby Hutcherson was all, but
mostly band leader. Yeah, mostly band leader. Yeah,
he was mostly band. Of course, that time there were all these collaborative recordings.
Blue Note things. Yeah,
sure. And Out to Lunch, of course, which was a seminal record. You know, with Eric Dolphy and everything. But basically, Bobby was going out with his own band too. So because vibe players, if you want to work, you got to get your own band.
Yeah. Definitely, yeah, cool. That's a nice statement to end.
Okay, yeah,
beautiful. Yeah,
it was a pleasure, man.
Thank you so much, David. I'll stop.
Dr. Jazz.